Hi, I'm Chelsea, the Christian nutritionist. Welcome to Interpreting Your NAC Results for Blood Sugar Regulation, Adrenals, and Hormonal Health. So, we are just going to go ahead and kick it right off with what is going wrong? What are the signs of blood sugar dysregulation? These are the questions you may have responded to that would be driving up your your symptom burden graph scores into the moderate and high priority levels. So, starting with awakening a few hours after falling asleep. This is a sign of low blood sugar dysregulation. Your body is unable to access energy during the night. So, it goes into a little bit of a crisis mode and wakes you up. Craving sweets, again, a sign of dysregulation tending towards hypoglycemia. It could also be a B vitamin deficiency, an overgrowth of yeast, or the need for digestive support, stomach acid, and digestive enzymes. Binge or uncontrolled eating, also a sign of needing digestive support, some stomach acid, some digestive enzymes. That is also true of excessive eating. Both of these would be could be indicative of this digestive system not working properly and your body unable to get the nutrients that it needs. And so it's like you're driven to eat more because your body is craving nutrients. It needs nutrients. And it's like, okay, whatever you just gave me, I didn't get it. So you need to go out and bring some more to me. And it may be that your body's just not breaking down the food appropriately. And so some digestive support could be helpful here. Also, with these two, it could also be a sign of some bad bacteria overgrowth. Bad bacteria loves and thrives on sugar. And those little buggers have to eat. And so they will drive you to crave more, to want more, to eat more if you have some bad bacteria or some yeast growing there. The rest of the signs, from about craving coffee and sugar in the afternoon down to shaky if meals are delayed, those are all dealing with low blood sugar, this tendency toward hypoglycemia, which would mean that you're either unable to store sugar efficiently, which would indicate a level of insulin resistance, or you can't get the sugar out. Maybe it's there, maybe it's stored, but everything is off. You cannot access it and get it out, and so therefore your body's a little bit in crisis mode. If you have a history of diabetes in your family and you indicated that on your NAC, that would also drive up your score here because you are at more of a risk for having diabetes. And that frequent thirst and urination, those are also signs of leading towards a diabetic state. So which are you, a sugar burner or a fat burner? Well, if you've been through Feast to Fast, I sure hope that you are metabolically flexible and can efficiently burn both. But if you are a straight up sugar burner, these are some of the things you're going to be experiencing. You can't access fat for energy. Your body is all reliant on sugar for energy. And we know that sugar doesn't last long. You can be used immediately and then it's socked away. And so your body, if it's relying on sugar, then you have to eat more. You have to eat more and more and more to keep those energy levels up. So it's hard to wait for meals. You're not as satisfied. You're always hungry. And you have this increased carb and sugar craving because your body is craving that energy. And this just creates this blood sugar roller coaster where you're like, hungry and then you eat and then your energy levels tank and then you're hungry again. You're just up and down all day with your cravings, with your moods, with your energy, and it's just a big old hot mess. So I'm pretty sure that all of us know that sugar is addictive. We've all experienced that. And it's very stressful to the body. Our body is continually watching our blood sugar levels. And the consumption of even a little bit of sugar kind of throws our body into a panic. In modern times, we have so much more access to sugar with all of the processed food that we have now that we are just getting such a higher sugar load than is historically than our ancestors did. And so our body is just really feeling the pain from that and really responding to the stress that it puts on the body. The more we consume, the more we crave. We all kind of know that. We know how that feels. The thing is that with all of these processed sugars, they are just really hypersensitizing our taste buds, our reward centers in the brain. So, historically, like a banana or blueberries would have been very rewarding. It would send that pleasure signal to the brain, like, oh, that's sweet, that tastes good, I am satisfied. But now, with all of these hyperpalatable foods, these processed sugars filled with chemicals, it's just kind of overload to the brain. They're so hypersensitizing that the brain now looks at a banana or a blueberry and is like, that ain't gonna do it. That doesn't taste sweet to me after all this other stuff I've been eating. So it just really throws things off. Um, there was a study on 43 cocaine addicted rats, and during their withdrawal period, they chose sugar water over cocaine water. Sugar is 8 times more addicting than cocaine or heroin. That is just crazy. It just activates those reward centers in the brain like no other. So, sugar can seriously put our body into sugar shock. Why is sugar harmful? Well, there's a ton of reasons, but here are some of them. It kills your white blood cells. It feeds parasites, yeast, and fungus, and cancer. It causes mineral deficiencies, vitamin deficiencies, especially vitamin B, all the B vitamins, and vitamin C. Your body just rips through those vitamins when you have sugar overload. So it's like you're constantly in a deficit if you are getting too much sugar, which of course creates a whole cascade of other problems because your body relies on the B vitamins and vitamin C for so many other systems in the body. It decreases neurotransmitter function as well. So, consumption of sugar depletes magnesium. Here's another mineral that it depletes, where most of us are a little deficient in magnesium as it is, and sugar will zap that as well. And we need magnesium to stay in a parasympathetic state, which we've been hearing a lot about throughout these videos. We need to be in a relaxed state. Magnesium is the relaxing mineral. That's why it's really good to have it at night for good sleep. It just helps reduce stress. And so we also need magnesium to detoxify the liver for DHA synthesis and about a few other 300 things that magnesium is needed for in the body. And sugar just does not help keep our magnesium levels up. It depletes them. Eating sugar puts the stress on the body, on the nervous system that will throw us into this sympathetic state, this fight or flight mode. And again, we talked about that. There's so many things that stress us out to put us in that mode. We don't need the help of sugar to do it, but it surely does it. And then insulin. So we know that when insulin is elevated, it prevents the amino acid L-tryptophan from crossing the blood-brain barrier. And it blocks other neurotransmitters function. So the body uses tryptophan. This is the example here. The body uses tryptophan to help make niacin and serotonin. Serotonin is that feel-good chemical. It's also a precursor to melatonin, which helps us sleep well. So you can see all of these issues. High blood sugar also narrows the microvasculature, which affects the eyes, the kidneys, the feet, and the brain. And that's why diabetics start experiencing problems with those. Okay, so let's talk about our pals. Our pals are the key organs that we need to keep blood sugar regulated. The pals are our pancreas, our adrenals, and our liver. Now, really, we should only need to be relying mostly on our pancreas and our liver. But what we're going to learn is that our adrenals are there to kind of come to the rescue when blood sugar is not working efficiently. So the pancreas is mostly responsible for secreting a few hormones. We secrete insulin to lower blood sugar, to get it out of the blood and put it into the cells. And the pancreas also secretes glucagon to increase blood sugar, to take the blood sugar out of storage and put it back into the blood where we need to use it. The adrenals secrete the stress hormone cortisol to raise blood sugar when we need it. When it is too low and there's not enough available fuel, so if we're not a fat burner, we would require our adrenals to step in more and more. The liver also is responsible for storing the energy storing glucose as glycogen in the liver. So we store our blood sugar in the liver, in the muscles, right? Those are our storage tanks. And so it holds that excess blood sugar so that it can be used when we need it. Okay, so insulin is our storage hormone. It lowers blood sugar, which is a great thing. We've got to be able to lower our blood sugar. So when we eat carbohydrates, they turn to sugar, they turn to glucose in our blood, and then insulin is secreted by the pancreas to come and escort that glucose into the cells for storage. So whatever we're not using right away goes into storage. It goes into the liver, it goes into the muscles, and then whatever is left over, because those facilities are limited, they are limited storage tanks. So whatever's left over, insulin will take to the fat cells. And so many people don't realize that excess carbohydrates turn to fat. But we do need that glucose to get, we need the insulin to get the glucose into the cell. High insulin blocks the signal of feeling full. And it's important to know that our ancestors never had this emergency need to lower blood sugar because they did not have excess carbohydrates and processed foods that create this blood sugar dysregulation. So this, all of these problems with blood sugar dysregulation and diabetes and this, metabolic syndrome are, fairly modern issues. And it's just really because of this overload of sugar. So insulin does lower blood sugar, but the primary purpose of insulin is to store excess nutrients in the case of a famine. So historically, we know that there were times there was more food and times there were less food. Seasonally, we found more food in the summertime when everything is ripe and there's more carbohydrates available. And so summer's kind of known as the fattening up season. And this is when insulin was the highest. It's there to help the body store energy for the winter when carbohydrates would be less available, when food would be less available. So really, insulin can be very helpful as a storage hormone to help our bodies survive these times that did not have enough food. But now in modern times, because we have an abundance of food, we have so much food that we are constantly loading our bodies up with it. And so insulin is constantly in play. We are constantly using insulin, and that was not really historically the case. So this is just this is kind of a more modern issue for the body. Now, glucagon it's the opposite of insulin. It raises blood sugar, which sounds bad, but actually it's very good. This is the hormone that gets the sugar out of storage and uses it, burns it up. And so glucagon is actually the fat burning and an unlocking hormone. It unlocks the energy, allows us to use stored energy, whether that is carbohydrates or some excess protein or fat. So glucagon is our friend. We want to stimulate glucagon. So what happens is glucagon is secreted from the pancreas to help maintain blood glucose levels in between meals. And so that is this ability to go a long time between meals and not have to snack every hour or two. If you cannot go, between a breakfast and a lunch, then your glucagon capabilities are off here. You're not being able to get into that stored energy. It will also increase fat breakdown from tissues, and during exercise, it just helps us access that fat for energy. So we love us some glucagon. All right, the role of our liver, the big daddy metabolic organ, is to store and raise blood sugar. It receives those hormonal signals to take it in and let it out. So that's the liver's job. And the liver has over 500 functions. In the detoxification videos, we learn that the liver is just responsible for so many things. It is overloaded, but one of its many, many jobs is to help regulate blood sugar, help be this metabolic organ. It is a detoxifying organ, but it's also a metabolic organ. So it does help raise and lower blood sugar by accepting and releasing the blood sugar. But the key is here, we have to remember that our liver needs to be healthy to do all of these things for this metabolic efficiency. And so when we are looking at our symptom burden graph, this is what I'm talking about how we have to address these body systems in order. Because you can see if you have a compromised liver, if your liver is so overburdened, then you already have a compromised metabolic organ. And so your metabolism is going to be thrown off if your liver is not healthy. Okay, the adrenals. So when do the adrenals come in? The adrenals should come in very rarely, actually, but unfortunately, we call on them all the time. Historically, the adrenals are called on for emergencies, but now in modern times, it's like everything is an emergency. Not only with food, we only, we just, when we make poor food choices, that is an emergency to our body. But all of the other stress in our lives make our adrenals respond. So, adrenals raise blood sugar basically because when we are in a stressed out crisis situation, and when your body is stressed, it feels like it's in a crisis and it wants energy to be able to deal with that crisis. And so, it will raise blood sugar in order to get that energy. So, it helps regulate blood sugar, but like I said, it should only be used in emergencies. Um, Cortisol is released from the adrenals to raise that blood sugar. Okay. And the other things the adrenals do, are the other functions, are release aldosterone. So it helps regulate the sodium retention. It all has to do with how you use salt and everything to keep that blood sugar, excuse me, that blood pressure balanced. It also has impact on our connective tissue strength. It encourages healthy sex hormone production and also releases epinephrine and norepinephrine. So, epinephrine is our adrenaline. It increases our heart rate, our blood pressure, increases blood sugar, and dilates bronchial tubes. And then our norepinephrine, our noradrenaline, shuttles blood away from the deep organs to the muscles and the heart for action. So, think of when you are in a stressed situation. Think of when, if you were out, this happened to me. This happens quite a bit actually. I'll be out on a walk and I'll hear a dog bark or I'll see a loose dog on the road and I can feel all of this adrenaline, this cortisol, all of these things just racing through my body because the body is preparing for you to fight or flight. That is the stress mode. Your body needs to be able to handle this stressful situation at hand. So, this is what's happening. It's flooding your system with cortisol, with epinephrine, with norepinephrine, just to give you that energy and what you need to deal with that stressful situation. And while it is doing this, it is putting everything else on the back burner. So, we've kind of talked about this in other sections, but when we are in a sympathetic state, when we are in fight or flight, your body is ready to deal with the stress at hand. And it puts all of the other body systems kind of on the back burner because you know what? If you are about to have to fight off a dog, you don't need to digest. You don't have to have a great immune system. You're not going to be reproducing right at that time, right? You're not detoxifying during that time. You need to survive. And so your body is focusing on survival and not these other functions. And so if you are a stressed out person, that is why you could often be experiencing problems with your immune system, with your reproductive system, with digestion, with your detoxification, because you are constantly in this fight or flight mode. So let's talk about cortisol. It is released by adrenals when blood sugar is too low and not supported by glucagon. So remember, we love us some glucagon because it releases the energy out to be burned. But if something is off there, if that is not working, if your glucagon hormone is not, the signal is not being interpreted correctly, then cortisol will come in. Your adrenals will release cortisol so that so that it can raise your blood sugar for energy. What happens when that goes on though is it results in this big sugar dump into the blood. Okay, so if you're relying on cortisol, it's like you get this big dump of sugar in the blood, and that is just very jolting to the body. Cortisol also mobilizes proteins from muscle tissue to increase amino acids in the bloods if necessary, and also breaks down our fats for energy. We are not meant to live day to day in this high cortisol stressed out state. Like I mentioned before, historically, the adrenals are there, or they are stress glands. They are there for emergencies. But today we make everything an emergency. We're stressed out by our families, by our jobs, by the traffic, by money, and by food. The fat cells in the belly have more cortisol receptors than anywhere else in the body, and so that means if you are constantly setting off cortisol due to stress, then you're going to see a lot of that building up in your belly, creating more fat there. And really, this is just a protective measure to protect our vital organs. Okay, so that our fat. Protects our organs in several ways. One, we store our toxins in our fat. And so it's just our body's way of trying to keep toxins and from these vital organs, from affecting these vital organs. But it may lead you to have a big belly. Okay, normal blood sugar regulation looks something like this. So we wake up, we haven't eaten for several hours, and our blood sugar level should be around at around about an 80, okay? But after a meal, it can raise up to 100 to 110 milligrams. When blood sugar reaches the upper limit, insulin gets that signal to store energy, okay? So when it starts getting up, insulin's coming in and ready to sock it away. And after a few hours, if blood sugar gets too low, but it's still healthy, we're still in a healthy range, that's when glucagon is released, okay? So when our blood sugar starts rising up, and kind of hits this level, then insulin is released. When it starts getting a little bit lower, then glucagon is released to bring in the blood sugar, to release that blood sugar to use as energy. Does that make sense? So here are our healthy blood sugar levels. Well, this first one is healthy, but these are the different ones that you might be experiencing. A healthy level would be between 70 and 90. If you are hypoglycemic, that would be below 70. Insulin resistance would be hovering around 100. Hyperglycemic, you're getting on up there. This is, pre-diabetic. We're about at 150 to 200. And then once we get to about 200 and above, we are at type 2 diabetes. So this is what a blood sugar roller coaster would look like, and it's all based on our food choices. Breakfast is really important, the meal that you start with for the day. Now, as we've learned in Feast to Fast, it doesn't necessarily matter what time you do that, it matters what you eat. Here, this person is starting with a bagel with low-fat cream cheese. And so that is all carbohydrates with, if you know, God did not make cows with low-fat udders. So when something is low-fat, that means they have to put other things in it. And it's usually higher in carbohydrates. So this is a high carbohydrate breakfast. It's going to burn up fast. And so by 9 a.m., this chick is hungry. That did not stick with her. There wasn't a good source of protein. There wasn't enough fat to keep her grounded. So she is tanking at 9. And so she's like, I'll just grab a granola bar and an espresso. Again, there is no nutrition there. We're throwing caffeine on an already stressed system. Granola bar is going to turn to sugar. So she's hungry again by noon. She has her sandwich, and that's okay. That's not terrible, but then she's got apples and carrots. And she thinks this is a great choice. I've got a turkey sandwich on whole grain bread, and I've got apples and I've got carrots, but we know that that is a predominantly carbohydrate meal. So look at her choices that she's had so far today. We are talking tons of carbs. And by 3, again, she is tired. She's tanking again. So she is trying to be mindful, but she goes over to the vending machine, grabs a Diet Coke, and is trying to wake up. So you can see how this blood sugar roller coaster happens. And once you're tanking, that is not the time to be making good choices. You are just grabbing for whatever to wake up. Where we want to be is on the healthy blood sugar train. Choo-choo! Girl, we want to get up, have us some good healthy fats. We've got an omelet, an apple with some almond butter. So we've got protein, we've got fat, and we've got some carbs there. We've hit all our macronutrients, and so we're going to be satisfied. We can easily make it till noon, and we're having a salad with some grilled chicken and some almonds. So we've got some good leafy greens, we've got great protein, we've got some good healthy fats, and we get all the way down to dinner time and have some chili with some grass-fed beef, some sour cream and baked potatoes. Oh, that sounds so good. More protein, fat, good source of real food carbohydrates. And if you are hungry, if you're hungry later, it's fine to have a snack if you're still hungry. If not, it's a good time to cut it off after dinner and start fasting. But a nighttime snack, maybe you have some organic berries with some coconut whipped cream or something like that. So this is how we would keep our blood sugar levels more steady and prevent this problem, this blood sugar dysregulation problem. Why do we want healthy blood sugar levels? Well, do you like being nice to your people? Do you like having energy? Do you like feeling good? Blood sugar dysregulation doesn't just disrupt your mood, energy, and cravings, but it affects all of your hormones, adrenals, your female hormones, and thyroid. So that's what we're going to dig into a little bit now, is how these blood sugar levels really start affecting things. And so when we're looking at our symptom burden graph, anything beyond blood sugar regulation, if you've got some high points, this could be wreaking havoc in those areas. So this is why it's really important to address these foundation in order of importance. So we start this endocrine cascade. If we have blood sugar imbalance, things are off. Remember, the adrenals have to come in to save the day. Then the adrenals set off a pituitary imbalance, which creates a thyroid issue because the pituitary is responsible for signaling thyroid hormones. And if we have thyroid issues, we're going to have metabolic issues. And it's also important for signaling our sex hormones. And so now we've just got a big old mess. And maybe you have PCOS, or maybe you have an irregular period. Maybe you're experiencing infertility, mood swings, acne, hair loss. All of these things can all start with the basis of blood sugar imbalance. Now, just real quick, I want to say something on the pituitary. We do not cover the pituitary category specifically in these videos, and here's why. Quite often the pituitary is, like I said, really relying on how all of these other systems work, but also in this pituitary section on the neck, there are so many cross-reference type symptoms that could really be caused by other areas, other body systems. And so, it's not going to be as reliable of a source to just look straight up at that pituitary and think it's a pituitary problem. It might be part pituitary problem, but it's likely caused by one of these other body systems kind of being thrown off, whether it's digestion, blood sugar, adrenals, what have you. But some of those pituitary signs that you might have indicated on your assessment that would bring that score up might be something like decreased or increased libido, the ability to tolerate sugar, memory failing, headaches, weight gain, menstrual disorders, ulcers. Those can all be attributed to other body systems, and so that's why we don't cover pituitary specifically. If pituitary was your only high point, then we might want to address that. But first, we have to address the other body systems in front of it. Again, you've seen this slide in some of the other presentations. It's so important to realize about this difference between the sympathetic and the parasympathetic modes. Sympathetic is our fight or flight. That's when we're stressed, and that's when we're panicked, and lack of sleep can create this. So can sugar. Parasympathetic mode is where all of our immune system functions well, digestion, reproduction, detoxification. And the more that we are in a sympathetic state, in this fight or flight, all of these other body systems will be suppressed. That alone could suppress your pituitary issues too. So that is something to keep in mind. Okay, adrenal fatigue. This would result from being in long periods of time in that sympathetic fight or flight state with high cortisol output. So when you're stressed, your body is releasing cortisol to compensate for that stress and trying to get that blood sugar raised so you have something, energy to deal with it. And that pumping of this, the cortisol and the adrenals. The adrenals are those little glands that sit on top of your kidney, and they're your stress glands. And so they are responsible for dealing with your stress. And the more we call on them and ask them to rescue us from all this stress by releasing cortisol and these other hormones, the more tired they get. They are burdened. They're just these little old glands, y'all. And so we kind of blow them out, and then they don't work properly anymore. And this leads to adrenal fatigue. And so if you are experiencing any of the following symptoms, like you're tired and wired at night, which means, you're tired, but then you can't sleep. You're also kind of wired. It's almost like that delirious feeling. And let me say something here. If you're somebody that's staying up at night and you're getting tired, and then you are, say you have something to work on for work and you've got to stay up, or even you're just trying to finish a TV show. What can happen is you'll be tired and then you're kind of forcing your body to stay up. And so the stress response will kick in and you get what's called like a cortisol whoosh, where all of a sudden you're like, oh, I'm awake. I'm awake. I can deal with this. I can stay up 2 or 3 more hours. And that's because your body was like, okay, she obviously has got to stay up and deal with some kind of stressful deal. So we got to better kick things into gear. And the more you do that and your cortisol starts kind of kicking in at night to help keep you awake, then everything gets thrown off. So at those signs of being tired at those natural times at 7, 8, 9 o'clock, you need to start winding it on down and not forcing your body to try to stay awake. If you have insomnia, if you are inflamed, so, if we have inflammation in any of these other areas of the neck that have come up to this point, any stress on the body, y'all, any stress, whether it's digestive stress, whether you're not getting enough vitamins and minerals, essential fatty acids to reduce that inflammation, all of this stress on the body creates inflammation, and your body has to deal with that stress, and we rely on the adrenal glands. High blood pressure, poor mineral absorption, and sex hormones. And so it's just so important to know what this adrenal fatigue, what can happen when we blow our adrenals out. It just starts creating all kinds of problems and we feel terrible. If you look at this little graph here, the way that our cortisol is supposed to work is that we should be highest in the cortisol in the morning. That's kind of what naturally starts waking us up. It wakes us up. It's what kind of gives us that little jolt of energy to get out of bed, or it should be. And then as the day goes on, our cortisol starts falling off, as it should, so that by the time it's the evening, we're ready to go to bed. If you have this kind of cortisol dysregulation, this red line would be kind of more your pattern, where you're tired in the morning and you just cannot get going. But then your cortisol starts rising towards the end of the day. So then you're awake. And so everything is just kind of backwards, and you are feeling totally off. So here's a slide, cardio and chronic cortisol. Here is the thing. If you have adrenal fatigue, doing hardcore cardio, like we're training for a marathon, is not your friend. Because chronic cardio, when I say chronic, that's like just really pushing yourself hard cardio. I'm not talking about going for just an easy little jog or something like that. But if you're running a lot, if you are pushing your body with some hardcore cardio workouts, that is a stressor to your body. And here's the deal. When you have adrenal fatigue, you do not need to add any other stressors to your body. Okay, that is when you need to cut out. You are making things a lot worse for yourself. And so I know for some people it's like, well, I need that exercise, I need that outlet. But if you have adrenal fatigue, your body is not going to be able to heal. And so it's time to back off a little bit and do some easier workouts, walking, some yoga, maybe some light weight training, something like that. So you can still exercise, you just don't want to push it. So hormones and cell resistance. So once we get our hormones all off and crazy train, then it's kind of like the insulin resistance. Your receptor sites become unresponsive to hormones. Like if your body keeps pumping out cortisol, just like if it overpumps insulin, it's like that pesky neighbor. For those of you that have taken Feast to Fast and you know my pesky neighbor analogy, it's like your neighbor coming over all the time. And it's like you are tired of seeing the neighbor. So you close the door, you hide, and you won't let it in. When our hormones are being overproduced, keep pumping out for some dysregulatory purpose, the receptor sites are like, I'm tired of seeing you and I am not letting you in. And then this just creates cell resistance, hormonal issues, and it's a big vicious cycle. So for instance, we can have leptin resistance, and leptin is our hormone that says put down the fork, sister. It's the one that says you're full. And so when we have leptin resistance, we are not getting that signal that we're full. That's a problem. The body can sense that the cells are not receiving the hormones in the cell. So it keeps sending out more and more of that hormone, causing fat storage. And fat stores in different areas based on which hormone cells are resistant. So this picture kind of gives you an idea. Now this, I wouldn't take this as absolute gospel here, this picture, but this could give you an idea of what maybe if you're accumulating fat in certain areas, what it could be. So that yellow, that kind of pecs and triceps would be a hormonal resistance to testosterone. Chest, thyroid, the cortisol in the belly, we have all those cortisol receptors in our belly. Insulin resistance, you might have some extra love handles going on. Estrogen, maybe you got some chunky quads, hamstrings. And finally, growth hormone, you might have a little extra padding there in your knees and your calves. So female hormone regulation, this just kind of rolls through all of the normal phases of a healthy cycle, from the follicular phase, ovulation, luteal phase. And what happens is, our estrogen rises over till about the midpoint of our cycle, and then it falls off, and then progesterone rises. And so any dysregulation of these hormones is going to create a problem. PMS syndrome, we all probably have experienced some of that, is something our society views as normal. But just because it is common doesn't mean it's normal. And I would say that about a lot of things that people experience. Some people think gas is normal. It's common, but it's not normal to the extent that some people experience it. So there's a lot of things like that we think are common, but they're not normal. So PMS affects about 75% women of childbearing age. And we know what those signs are: bloating, breast tenderness, mood swings, irritability, cramps, depression, fatigue, appetite changes. So if you marked any of those off on your NAC under the women's issues category, then this is kind of what we're talking about here. We're talking about some hormonal dysregulation, which are likely caused by any of these other categories preceding it. A high carb and sugar intake worsens PMS, and it also creates, an inflammatory response and promotes that bad gut bacteria. And, if we look back at liver health, when our liver is overburdened, it cannot metabolize excess estrogen. That's one of the roles of the liver to do, one of those many, many roles. And so if the liver is kind of sluggish and has too many other things to deal with and can't metabolize that excess estrogen, you can become estrogen dominant, which would really lead to a lot of these PMS symptoms. So menopause, kind of the end here of our periods and our cycles. I get a lot of women who start experiencing really severe menopausal symptoms, but it's kind of the same thing, the same principle. If all of these other body systems are not working appropriately, then these menopausal symptoms will be exaggerated. And they really shouldn't be. So, I mean, contrary to popular belief, menopause should not be this terrible, terrible thing. It's a natural transition where your ovaries stop producing estrogen and progesterone. And it can be a gentle transition if your body is supported with the resources that it needs. Impaired blood sugar regulation disrupts hormonal balance and it leading to further decreases in estrogen and progesterone. So you are just impairing what you have. This increases the severity and frequency of all of those symptoms like weight gain, night sweats, hot flashes, and a lack of libido. It's also important to note here that the adrenals take over hormone production in menopause. And so if your adrenals are a hot mess, if you have a bunch of stress, if your adrenals are stressed because of blood sugar dysregulation, your menopause experience will also be a hot mess and you will feel like a big old hot mess. So you can see again this cascade, this endocrine cascade, how everything affects one another, and all starts with the food that we're eating, what we're putting in our body, but also how these body systems work. So how do we control blood sugar? Well, if you are a feast to fast veteran, you know how to do this. We increase fats and proteins and decrease carbs. Really, we want a nice balance of the macronutrients. But if you have blood sugar dysregulation, what we're going to need to do is way dial back those carbs for a while, increase the fats and the proteins to restore those to the body, and then we can kind of swing back around and have a more balanced macronutrient ratio. Reduce your coffee consumption. So these next two things, so I will have a lot of people have blood sugar, a high blood sugar handling point on their symptom burden graph and be like, what is up? I am eating a really clean diet. Why is this so high? Well, unfortunately, if you drink way too much coffee or if you are not getting enough sleep, that can be a problem because both of those things can increase cortisol, which would throw off blood sugar regulation. So even if your diet is clean and you're feeling good about your food choices, if there's too much coffee going on and you're not getting enough sleep, you are stressing that system, which will throw things off. So that could be the source as well. Another way to control blood sugar is to exercise, build up that muscle. If you will recall, when we store blood sugar, we store it in either the liver or the muscles, okay? And so the more muscle we build, we have more room. The muscle eats up those carbohydrates for energy. And so if we build more muscle, we're going to have a little bit more leeway with how many carbohydrates we can have. Those muscle are greedy for carbohydrates. And so they'll just kind of suck them up. So you'll have more storage space for carbohydrates, so to speak, more use for them. So building muscle is good and it helps to burn fat. And finally, it reduces stress because stress can lead to blood sugar dysregulation. And you know that my favorite way, the way that I think we can really bring peace into our lives and get into this parasympathetic state is to get into the Word, read God's promises to you, read the promise of peace, and that is what I find the best way to reduce my stress. How to soothe the adrenals. Those same, all the slide before would apply, all of those things, but regulate blood sugar, that's number one. Reduce the stressors, including the food stressors. Reduce any strenuous exercise. I did mention that before because that is a stressor on the body. If you are doing a chronic cardio where you are just really pushing your body, getting on that stair stepper for an hour, when you have adrenal fatigue, you're not going to be able to heal. So for a while, you need to choose walking, yoga, or light weights. Eat your starchier carbs at the evening meal. This is just going to be helpful overall for the overall body system. It will help soothe the adrenals. It'll help prepare your body for sleep. We always get a little bit tired after eating carbs, right? So it's going to help your body prepare for sleep and help your body be able to regulate some of that blood sugar in the night. And carbs just really help soothe the adrenals. And it's one reason that, going too low carb can be problematic for the adrenals and also the thyroid. So eating your starchier carbs a little bit later in the day is just a little bit more strategic. And if you do want to try a supplement, ashwagandha can be helpful for helping to just kind of reduce stress and soothe those adrenals. If you are a nerd like me and like to watch documentaries, these are pretty cool. I'm always looking for good documentaries to watch, but these are great, and I love watching these health documentaries. They just kind of help motivate me, inspire me, and are just good sources for learning. So you could check these out on Netflix. Thank you for being here. I hope this was helpful. I hope you found the source maybe of some of your issues, way that you can improve. Have a healthy and blessed day.